Looking at a new aircraft. Well, actually not a new aircraft, a new version. In this case, it's the SSG Boeing 747-800. This is version 2, just introduced. So I thought we'd take a look at this today, see what the differences are between this and version 1. There are a few interesting differences, so I will invite you to come along with me on a flight today. By the way, this is Steve. Welcome back to Desk-Bound Aviator. I'm Steve, your host, and we're going to take a flight today from KORD, Chicago, down to a brand new payware version of KMCO Orlando. So I'm very interested to see how that looks. Haven't even checked it out yet. I just installed it last night. So let's take this flight, check out this new aircraft, and check out that new airport. First thing I want to show you is indoors. It's pretty much the same Boeing brown as I guess they would say, although it's not brown anymore. They use a different color nowadays in their aircraft. But in the 747 generation, they used a kind of brown, not quite as bilious as this, but it was still a brownish color, or gray brown, I think, a little bit nicer. So there are a few things going on in here that are interesting, and perhaps the most visible, interesting thing about this aircraft, if you come back here, all of a sudden this door now opens. Whoops, and if you go in the right direction, you will see a cabin. Believe it or not, SSG put a cabin in the 747. That's the good news. The bad news is it's only up here on the upper level in the first class section, and it's a pretty straightforward cabin. I mean, it's not, by some standards, it's not that plush. If you go downstairs, and actually you can go downstairs if you go way to the back here, and you turn around, you will see back here where the galley is, if you turn around this way, there actually are some stairs, and you can go down the stairs, like so. And when you get to the bottom of the stairs, let's see if we can zoom out just a little bit, get ourselves oriented properly. There's a door there, and you can actually open that door, and I'll show you how a little later. And right behind that door should be the auto gate. But that's about it. If you go over here and you try to go through this curtain into the other passenger area, you take a dive. They haven't finished that section of the airplane yet. So let's come back up here, and the other thing that's kind of new in the cockpit here is a very nice iPad with controls for all the various features of the aircraft. So let's just walk through some of those. You can see it's got GPU discom. That means discontinue. In other words, the GPU is on right now. If we go into options, we can check off show or hide yoke, show or hide rain effects, and I hide those. We'll leave the measurements in kilos, and we'll speed up the alignment of the IRS. Ground surfaces, as I mentioned, you can open all the doors and cargo hatches and so forth by using these devices here, or some of the menu items. Now in fueling, I've already checked SimBrief for this flight today, and SimBrief tells us that we're going to use up a little bit above 48,000 kilograms of fuel. So let's go ahead and set that for, 38. Let's set it for 40. So we'll just use this 10 here. You can go hundreds, tens, and ones. And if you go tens, it increases by 10,000. And so let's just make it a nice round 40 and start refueling. And payload, we can presume we're going to have a full flight today with a bit of cargo. So we'll load that. And from here, we can go up to the upper panel. Now, as always with SSG, they kind of dumb down the upper panel. Not too bad. They've improved it a little bit, but most of the stuff is on by default. So you start off by opening up the battery. And by the way, I'm doing all of this for you because there may be some viewers who have the SSG or are about to get this one, and they kind of really want to see what the procedures are for starting this thing up from cold and dark and flying it and so forth. Some of the hidden features that you may not be aware about. So that's why I'm kind of walking through all this. And I hope those of you who are not that interested in it may find it interesting anyway. So once you got the battery on, you can turn on external power, which is available as you see, and it pretty much starts up everything that needs to be on, at least for the time being. We can put on a beacon light by doing that. We can turn on the logo light and leave the others off for the time being. The other thing you want to do is rotate these 3 IRS dials to the nav position. That allows the IRS to align itself. Okay, from here we can go down below to the upper panel, and by using my F11 key I can bring up the FMC, or as they call it, the CDU. Not sure why they call it that. We can rotate this dial over here so we can get a map view. Whoops, keep that there. Now, we can then tap the FMC and go to position init and indicate our reference airport, which is, and by the way, I'm going to tap this little sidebar over here to allow my keyboard entry. So we're at KORD. We enter that left 2 key. Our gate today is H17. And we need to now tap on this GPS position, the right 4 key, put that in the clipboard, and then enter it in the right 5 key, and that now sets our IRS position. From here we can go to route. Once again, we can enter KORD. And our destination is KMCO. Flight number today, we can check that. Let's go over here to our browser, and I'm seeing a flight-aware flight that I'm duplicating. It's 2398 American. So AAL 2398. And we can enter that in the flight number area. I'm going to try an experiment here with co-route. And yes, obviously you can enter the route manually, and to show you that, we would go to Sky Vector where we've got the route established. A lot of rain today in the country. We've got the route established. I have gone ahead and saved this route in 2 FMS formats, and I'll show those to you. One is in the FMS plans folder, that is to say XPlane11 output FMS plans. That's the standard XPlane11 version of FMS files. There's another way to do it, and this is the way that SSG prefers to do it. If you go to XPlane and then into custom data folder and then UFMC, you'll find a flight plans folder there, and within that I've saved this route as a UFMC file. That's what SSG prefers. You can do it either way. There's a different procedure for using these files, but I'm going to go ahead and use the UFMC file. So in order to do that, I can just do it right from here, and all I need to do is to type in KORD, KMCO, and enter it into co-route. It asks me if I want to load it, and I say activate it and execute it. And so that route is now stored, and you'll see there most of the waypoints. So I'm going to come back in here a little later and just modify some of that as we get closer to completion. So from here, I'm going to go to the departure and arrivals page. And our departure is going to be out of KORD, is going to be runway 28 right, I believe. Let's just check that by going, I want to make sure I don't lose this guy. That's our star into Orlando. If I go to the chart for KORD, I can see 28 right. We're located right about here on the end of that little peninsula. So we're just going to taxi down here onto 28 right. So let's enter that by going to departure and then scrolling down to 28 right. There's no SID, so we'll just execute that. And now let's go to the route page and go to page 2. Now we'll see all of our pertinent waypoints here. Dent, Darcy, Dregs, Dumge, Skodo. Dent, Darcy, Dregs, Dumge, Skodo. Swap ATL. On the next page, swap ATL. There is an airway here, but there don't appear to be any waypoints within that airway. The termination of the airway is yes, spelled in that strange fashion, and then direct to OTK and the start of our star. Now here's our star, Piglet 6, into Orlando. It starts here at OTK. We've got some altitude restrictions indicated on the chart. We're going to come down here, and we're going to be landing to the south, since the wind today in Orlando is around 200 degrees for most of the afternoon. And so we're going to be landing to the south on runway 18 left. I'm sorry, I think it's 18, is it 18 right or left? 18 right, that's correct. And that's what I've got here. So there's the chart for the plate for that. So we're going to be switching off here at Owner or at Tiger, direct to Owner, and then down to runway 18 right. 18 right, I should say. So we've got OTK. So let's go into the legs section here now. Or rather, better yet, let's go to arrivals and departures and select our arrival runway, which is 18 right, ILS. Right there. And if we take a look at that, we can see that the transition into that approach is going to be at Hellop, which is there, Hellop. So we can select that. And we're going to be using the Piglet 6 with a transition at OTK. There's Piglet 6 and there's OTK. So let's go ahead and execute that. And now we can see what we've got on our plan. So we start off at Dent, Darcy, Dregs, Dumge, Skoto. By the way, you can see there's no solid line here. In order to get that solid line, you have to go back over to the routes page and activate it, and then execute it. And now you'll see a magenta, solid magenta line. So if you don't see that solid magenta line, just bear in mind you've got to go back to the route and activate the route. So let's go back here to legs, and we can go down to each of the waypoints. Let's see, I guess we were there. So we're continuing on swap ATL. Yes, O2K, here's the beginning of our star. Akuna, Natata, Jasmine, Jafar, Pigley, Rifki. There's Tiger. When we get down to the later part of the flight, we see that Owner is already in the route. So what we need to do is capture Owner and then bring it back up here and replace Tuono with Owner, and that should clear up the route. And there we go. So now we've got a straight shot into runway 18 right. So now we can go to the init ref page. And to do this, we just need to tap on left key 1 to activate the cruise center of gravity and the gross weight. The fuel is already calculated. ZFW is fine. The reserves, they suggest the number 22, and that is 10,000 kilograms times 2. So 22 kilograms of reserve. That's SSG's recommendation. Our flight altitude today is going to be 350 and 090 for cost index. Yeah, there we go. All right. Now we can go to thrust limit. I always put in 40 as the SEL. The outside air temperature is already posted by the FMC in this aircraft. We can then go to takeoff. Our flaps is going to be 20. Lots of flaps on a 747. You see this trim number 7.5. What you can do with that is come over here. Let me just slide this over a little bit to the ND or the ICAS screen. And you'll see down here in a green box that same number 7.5. That's your trim value. And if you have a keyboard number like I do, I use the 1 and 2 keys. If you have a keyboard set up to adjust the trim value, you can change that number in accord with this. Now, in this case, the two numbers are identical so that you don't have to change anything. So we can now come over here to our VREF speeds. And we've got a V2 speed of 160. And so before I do anything else, I'm going to take that V2 speed and put it into my IAS Mac window by scrolling the dial down to 160. All right, that takes care of the basic setup. Now what we can do is go to the nav rad page and jump back over here to Sky Vector, take a look at our plate, and it says that the frequency at Orlando 1818, right? I always make that mistake. Orlando ILS LOC runway 18 right is 111.90 at an approach course of 185. 11190, approach course 185. It is preset, absolutely right. So we can just leave that alone. You don't need to enter anything into the course slot up there. So we're set. We can put that back over to the init ref page, and we can hit this little red button to make that go away. So next thing is we can come over here and rotate our dial here up back over to map view. We can take a look at the approach plate again and see that our minimums value, our decision height, decision altitude, the DA is going to be 200 feet using ILS. So we can rotate this dial, and you'll see down here on the PFD, there, you'll see it says radio, and we can just dial that up to 200, like so. Now the baro dial on this particular aircraft, SSG says that it is now accurate to the real 747 format, and it's throwing a lot of people out of kilter because they're not used to it. What you need to do is first dial the number that you want and then activate it by hitting STD. So for example, if we come over here to our chart and we put a cursor there, we can see that the baro here, I'm sorry, we want to do O'Hare. The baro O'Hare is 2986. So what you need to do is just rotate this, and you'll see this number down below here, the white number, you'll see that change, 2986. Now that you've arrived there, you just activate it by pressing this STD center of that dial. All right, having done that, we can now throw on our flight director switches and arm the auto throttle. We can go ahead and press the LNAV and VNAV buttons and arm those systems. Our heading is going to be roughly 280. I think it's 285 for the runway that we're taking off on. Cruise altitude is going to be 35, like so. We can rotate the auto brake down to rejected takeoff position. And that pretty much takes care of the upper panel. Last thing we might want to do is come down here and tell everybody to sit down and fasten their seat belts and rotate the transponder over to TA. Right in there, you see that little notch right in there. Okay, so having done all that, let's turn on the APU. In order to do that, we first have to fuel it. And the fuel buttons are all located in this location on the upper panel. And so you want to press all of them, including the ones that are blank. And I'll come back to those a little later. Okay, so those are on. We can then rotate the APU dial to start, and it automatically springs back to the on position. When it's up and running and available, you'll see it indicated over there. We're getting ready to start the aircraft pretty soon, so we can go ahead and rotate these hydraulic switches into the proper positions. You'll recall this from earlier SSG iterations of the 747. The two outside ones go down to the auxiliary position, and the center ones go to the auto position. We've got our APU now, so we can go ahead and activate that using both switches, and then we can turn on the APU bleed, and we'll go ahead and turn on one of the three packs and leave packs 2 and 3 closed or off. The last thing we want to do then is to pull out the start switches here just by tapping them. All 4 of those guys. And we can put the nav light on. And since we're going to be moving shortly, we'll go ahead and put on the strobe light. And that should pretty much do it. Let's call up our pusher and get ourselves pushed. And I'll spare you the agony of watching all of that, but I'll bring you back when things get interesting.
So connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake. Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
Okay, so we've got all our start switches set. All we need to do now is go down to the center panel and start off with engine number 1 just by raising the cutoff switch. And you'll see up here on the ICAS screen, when this gets up to around 10%, you can go ahead and activate engine number 2. Start with 4, then 2, then 3, then 1. Park brake on, come down here and turn on the transponder up to the TARA position, like so. Go ahead and turn on all our lights. And let's take a look and see if there's any traffic in our vicinity. We've got an airplane flying overhead, got some traffic behind us. Doesn't look like anything right now. All right, ATC has given us a clearance to go ahead and taxi on out.
80 knots. V1. Rotate. V2.
You're up. Lights come off.
Bank angle.
The Big Mama. There's 10,000. We'll go ahead and turn off the lights. You can do this by either pushing your mouse or using the mouse wheel. It'll work either way. When you see that up and down arrow, you can use your mouse wheel to activate that switch. So now our speed starts climbing, as does our aircraft, on our way up to cruise altitude of 35,000. And for some reason the LNAV button went off, so let's see what happens when we click that. Maybe that's what that error message was. That should take care of that. Yep. Okay, so that's pretty much the story. Got a couple of other views here. One set up one view outside one of the available windows, taking a look at the port side wing and the engines, and the other view from inside the upper cabin. This particular door does open, but nothing leads to it. The other door, this is the door down below. You can open that door, but not while you're in flight, of course. That's the one that the gate comes up to. And we've got some exterior views. Great looking aircraft. Okay, so I'm going to take over the flight now, and I'll give you a while to relax. You can go back and sit down in the beautiful lounge and have a cup of coffee and take a snooze if you like. And I'll bring you back when we're going through anything interesting. One thing that I will call attention to, I don't see it yet, but sooner or later we will get a message here, or we'll get an error light, an annunciator light, and it will reference our fuel tank situation. And I'll tell you what, I'll bring you back when that happens, because that's kind of an important feature that most of you who have flown the earlier versions of the SSG 747 probably aren't familiar with. So rather than try to show it to you when I can't show it to you, I'll show it to you when it occurs. So we'll look at that a little bit later. Right now things are fine. Oh, I'll go ahead and demonstrate this baro again as we're approaching 18,000. Let's see, we go over 18. And so now what we want to do is switch this back to the standard view. And now to do that, all you need to do is hold this button in for about a second. And it pops in maybe 2 or 3 seconds. And it now changes it over to the standard view. When you want to change it to, let's say, the Orlando setting, what you would need to do is rotate this dial like so, and then activate it by hitting the standard. I'm going to leave it set on standard by holding that button in. There we go. That's how that works. It's actually very simple and pretty intuitive once you get used to it. If you're not used to that system, it kind of throws you out of joint. You wonder why it doesn't work the way it always used to work. Okay, that's about it. I'll see you a little later. Have a nice snooze. Welcome back. Looks like we've got somebody heading our way. I was flying earlier and just glanced out the window as this jet went flying. Must have been 5 miles away from us. I mean, he was very, very close. So we're about to hit TD here, and we're also about to hit this guy. Well, no, I guess not. He's heading a different direction now. Probably above us. Anyway, we're about to hit top of descent. And I also, finally, after waiting all afternoon for this signal to come up here, that I wanted to show you. So first things first, let's start our descent, which will occur momentarily. Let's see how close he is. There's our top of descent. There goes our neighbor. All right, he's flying by over there. Can't even see him. Much further away than the fellow I saw this afternoon. So what we have here that I wanted to describe to you is a note on the ICAS that says fuel tank engine, fuel tank / engine. And you will notice when we look down below at the lower display, I have it set on fuel, which you can do by pressing this button over here. You see all 6 of these little fuel tank indicators lit up. And when you see this indicator right here, here's what you need to do. This is straight from Boeing. You need to come up to the upper panel and you need to turn off the 2 overhead fuel pumps, or the 4 of them I should say, the 2 outer ones, overhead and overhead, right here and right here. And then you also want to shut off the fuel crossfeed switch. And when you do that, you will see that message has gone away. You'll also see these indicators in the center of the 2 outer and inner tanks. They are now empty. So that's the procedure, for those of you who need to know. All right, so we're descending nicely. We'll just let the FMC control the speed. If we start to get too close or above the red or magenta arrow here, then we'll deploy the speed brakes, but right now I don't think we need them. This airplane is so big it tends to slow down by itself anyway. All kinds of traffic out here tonight, don't we? Okay, starting to make our turn here at Owner. Zoom in a little closer. And we can keep getting an FMC message for speed reduction, but we really don't need to do that. So I'm just going to ignore it. And now that we've got our indicator for locator and glide slope, I'm going to go ahead and arm the system by tapping the APP button. And as soon as we acquire one or the other, you will see the appropriate light out, or like out. There's LNAV right there. So we've acquired our locator. When we've acquired both locator and glide slope, you'll see all three CMD lights light up, indicating that we've got all three autopilot systems locking onto that signal, guiding us to the runway. And now that we can see the runway, we can go ahead and give ourselves some more flaps. FMC speed drops accordingly, coming down through 3,000. And in short order, we will have our glide path, or glide slope, I should say. If it was an RNAV runway, we would have a glide path, but it's an ILS runway. And there's our glide slope. So about now we can probably lower the gear. Take a look outside of that. Here we come. Four big trucks in the rear. Two outboard, two inboard. Another notch of flaps. I'm going to lower that FMC speed. I'm not sure why that's 195. That should probably be down in the 160 range. And we are descending.
1,000.
About 8 knots on the nose, close to it. Maybe set this down to 157 or so. It's on an angle, so we can do maybe 155. That should do it.
Approaching 18 right.
Full flaps. Copy lights look good. Speed's nice. I'm curious to see how this airport looks. I just purchased this airport last night. This is KMCO Orlando. Looked pretty nice in the previews.
200. Minimums.
There's our minimums at 200.
100. Glide slope. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Bingo. Reverse. Nice and smooth. reverse can come off. Auto brakes let go. Let the autopilot go, which lets us steer. And let's see if we can. Don't really see a sign. Well, that looks like the exit before ours. We're looking for Y. Looks like he's crossed. So we'll come up here and turn off the lights. Okay, folks, that's it. That's the 787 version, 787-800 version 2 from SSG. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have a mind to take a look at this, the purpose of this video is to give you kind of a heads up on operating it. Thanks for joining me today. This is Steve. I appreciate your being here. If you have any questions about this airplane or anything else that I fly, I'd be happy to respond to that in the comments below. And if you have anything on your hit list of what you'd like to see, by all means let me know. I'll see you soon.